what's going on, y'all? Welcome to the first episode of, I don't know what we're going to call this, Edsel Pod. I don't really have a name for this. I don't even know if we're going to keep doing this. It was funny, I was driving to Dallas yesterday, and I was thinking about how, like, podcasts are really, like, they're make or break by whether or not you have a good podcast voice. And if I don't have a good podcast voice, which is yet to be determined, this whole thing could just stop today. So this could be the first of many, or it could be the first of one, the first and last. I also don't really know what to call this podcast. I was thinking about like Edsel Pod just because it's kind of funny, but I was also thinking about calling it just like the trials and tribulations of the artistic life and the creative process and morning thoughts by Edsel. Not really, but some sort of run-on sentence. I hate how everything has to be like branded these days. I just feel like, I mean, it's a good idea to brand something and I'm all for it. First of all, I don't even know. I don't want to like brand this podcast and then like 2 weeks later not be doing it. But also it just feels like sometimes the whole like techie branding thing just gets like super cheesy. Like, you know, oh, you like naps, come to our store Naply, or you like shopping, come to our store Storely. And I don't know, I just feel like that loses some of its authenticity. So I don't really know what to call this yet, but hopefully I'll come up with something, and hopefully, if you guys have ideas, let me know. Also, when I was driving to Dallas yesterday for a test, I YouTubed how to stop saying I actually recorded this last week for the first time, and God, I just say like every third sentence. And fun fact, the best advice I heard was when you finish like saying a thought, close your mouth, because when you keep your mouth open, you fill this like kind of the space or the silence while you're thinking about the next thing to say with what they called vocal garbage, which I thought was kind of funny. So if you hear me just like pausing, or if you hear just kind of dead silence, that's not, sorry, let me turn off my phone. You didn't hit the pause button. That's just me thinking about what to say next. So we'll give it a shot. But yesterday, damn it, I just said it. Yesterday I went to Dallas to shoot a personal test, meaning that I had a concept that I wanted to shoot, some work that I really need for my portfolio. And so I organized the shoot. I rented a studio. I got 3 or 4 models to shoot. I have a hair and makeup. I had an assistant, all that stuff. Organized myself and shot some really great work. But it's really funny. I still get nervous before every single photo shoot, and not just like a little bit of nerves. Like I literally can't sleep the night before a photo shoot. Like the shoot on Saturday that I did, I organized it. It was my shoot. Like there was no client. I set the time that we loaded in. I set the time that we loaded out. I said how long I was going to like test my lighting and all that stuff. And I was literally the night before, like literally still couldn't sleep. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if that, I think about that moment where that moment where you're first starting a shoot, and no matter like what your first frame is of a photo shoot, it's likely just going to be garbage. Like you're literally hitting the shutter thinking like delete. And like no one's comfortable. The talent's really stiff. Your direction is a little stiff. And that's just something that like you just kind of have to work through. Like you'll start to kind of get into a flow and feel more creative, etc. as you start to shoot. But every time you start a shoot, there's that moment where you're looking at the computer and you finally gotten like a shot that you're like, okay, this is pretty good. And you like turn to, your creative director or whoever, and you're like, this is like, oh yeah, like I kind of like this. And they just say, yeah. And it's like that, yeah, ... like ellipses that is just like, it basically is like 1,000-year ellipses. It's like, yeah, I don't really like this, and I'm concerned about how this shoot is going right off the bat. ... And then eventually everything evens out, and like everyone's super excited once you get that shot that that is working and stuff. And sometimes it doesn't take that long at all to get there, but I don't know. That's just maybe it's that moment. And yesterday, I didn't even have like a creative director, but it was, I had rented studio time, and it was something that I was really trying to create some high production value and bring that to it. And, it was just experimenting. And so I think that I kind of put that pressure on myself every time that I shoot, but it went really well, and I'm just stoked with how everything turned out. So excited to kind of process that and show you those images. I'll talk a little bit about the shoot next week after I've kind of gone through those. So let's talk about the podcast real quick. I started this podcast because it seemed like, I get a lot of people that respond to my morning thoughts, which is super cool. The trouble is that it's really difficult to kind of keep up with all of those responses in the DMs. People want to ask me follow-up questions and know a little more and get advice and all that stuff, which I really appreciate and love responding to. It's just I don't always have the time to do it. And so I thought it'd be really cool to kind of create a resource for people to go deeper into morning thoughts. Like, I don't want to change morning thoughts, because what I think is really cool about morning thoughts is just the idea is like really succinct. Like, it's just a really quick, here's what I'm thinking about, here's how I think about it. I try to distill it down to as short and succinct of an idea as I can, or a thought as I can. And I think that's kind of digestible on Instagram, or at least in stories. And people seem to think that as well. But I also think that it leaves a little bit to be desired as far as like explanation or follow-up or whatever it is, because a lot of the thoughts are complex sometimes. So that's what this podcast is. If you guys enjoy it, then I'll keep doing it. If nobody listens, then we'll just trash this and pretend that it never happened, because sometimes on the internet you can still do that. So hopefully you guys like it. But I'm also filming this, so it'll be in audio form on wherever you get a podcast, which I guess is like iTunes or Spotify, and will also be in video form. So I'm going to post this on YouTube. A lot of people have been asking me about YouTube. I still want to have a presence there, and I still love the platform, but the problem with YouTube is that like the kind of content that I am passionate about, that I enjoy doing, that talks about creation and the creative process, just isn't particularly popular on YouTube. People just want to see gear reviews and unboxing videos and drama, and that's the stuff that gets views on YouTube, which is cool if you're into that. I still enjoy doing some gear reviews, and hopefully we'll continue to do more as new gear comes out, or I think it's important, or whatever. But to me, I really want to talk about like the actual process of creating. And the problem with doing that in video form is it just takes a long time to shoot and edit, and that for not a lot of views, unfortunately. But I think this is a really good solution, because I don't really need to edit this. I'm just going to record it, post it to YouTube. You can watch it there. If you don't want to keep the tab open, you can just find it in a podcast form. So that's the idea behind this. Let me know if you guys have any more suggestions on what you want to hear, and let's get into it. So I kind of want to just go through each morning thought and maybe expand a little bit on it. So last Monday, I'm gonna have to pull this up on iTunes. But last Monday, I talked a little bit about discipline and how discipline gets a bad rap because it's synonymous with punishment. But in my life, it's been really beneficial, especially in the past year, as I started to get up earlier. And let me just read it real quick. So I didn't eat super well last weekend. So when I woke up at 5 a.m., which I normally do, I was just like feeling super not excited, super rough, and not energized to start the week. But I said, I still woke up, I still worked out, I'm still thankful for another day. Discipline gets a bad rap because it's synonymous with punishment, but it shouldn't. It isn't a thing you do to make you like sound hardcore or suck the joy out of life. It's a fail-safe that does what's best for you, even when you're not motivated to do it for yourself. And, I think that's so it's such like it's an interesting thought because, you know, everyone, you see all these like Instagram and YouTube CEOs talking about discipline and like they just want to be super hardcore. And I get that that's like a super like alpha male kind of macho thing to talk about. And that's not really how I mean, I think that there is that part of discipline, but I also think that like it's honestly just doing what's best for you. Like, so I've started getting up really early in the morning to work out because I know that I feel way more energized in the morning. I am way more creative in the morning and I'm just more productive. Like by the afternoon, I'm just kind of garbage in terms of like creatively or productive or whatever, or productivity or whatever it is. So it really helps me to start my day early. The problem with that is it doesn't get any easier every day when the 5 a.m. alarm goes off. Like no matter how many times I do that, that alarm still sucks. Um, and so one of the things that I think about is like, even when it sucks, I know for a fact that like it's better for me to get up, even if I don't really want to. And I think about like, oh, but maybe I could sleep in a couple hours and, you know, I'll wake up and feel more refreshed. But I also know that every time I sleep in, I just end up feeling like way more exhausted and just kind of like drag ass all day than if I had actually gotten up and worked out and actually gotten some endorphins and adrenaline from that. And so even when I am tired, I know what's best for me and don't even allow myself to kind of entertain those thoughts. And I credit that to discipline, to just getting up and getting out of bed and getting dressed and going to exercise. And so that's why I called discipline a failsafe. I think it's sort of like the motivator that gets you out of bed even when you're not motivated yourself. Like I think a lot of people love to talk about passion. And like, yeah, I'm passionate about waking up in the morning. Like I actually love that time and I'm passionate about going to work out. But that doesn't mean that every day I have that passion. And so discipline I think is just more consistent than passion is a lot of times. And that applies to work and to creativity, etc. So that was Monday. Let's see, Tuesday. I said, these days, Instagram often feels less like a social media platform and more like the digital age QVC. Hopefully, whatever soul it has isn't leaving with its founders. So that was like right when the news broke. Monday night / like Tuesday morning was the news that Kevin and Mike, who founded Instagram, were leaving Instagram. And honestly, it just felt like kind of the last straw in a string of moves by Facebook to make Instagram just more about the businesses and the advertisers than it is about the community. You know, when Instagram started, it was all about the community. They had regional worldwide community teams that were on staff at Instagram, which they've since disbanded. They had, you know, they really placed a lot of emphasis on the meetups, and then the users kind of created their own meetups, etc. And I think there's still a little bit of that left, but honestly, these days it's more about like the business and about running ads and generating revenue for Facebook. And again, like I don't want to say that that's a bad thing. Like I think that brands need ways to get people's attention and to find an audience. The problem is, you know, it used to be like 1 in every 10 posts was an ad, right? And now it's like with the algorithm, it's like 1 in every 3 or 4 posts is an ad, or you know, it's influencers, you know, just posting about some, I don't know, some like fit tea or lip kit or body scrub or something. It's funny because like literally the old people on QVC, like the Instagram influencers, like the models and whatever, are literally the same as the old people on QVC selling like the ShamWow and the copper pots that never, you know, get rusty and the knives that cut through anything. It's literally the exact same. They're the same people. So that's my thought about Instagram and turning into kind of a platform that feels more and more like Facebook every day. Like I don't know about you guys, but I never check my Facebook feed. I can't check my Facebook feed. I use it sometimes for groups and stuff, but for the most part, I try to stay off Facebook as much as possible. And it feels like Instagram's kind of moving in that direction. So we'll see what happens. But that the Kevin and Mike leaving seemed like a pretty big event. So that was Tuesday. On Wednesday, I talked about something I have no business talking about, which is sneakers. But I said multiple new sneakers coming out per week, exclusive releases, collabs, customizations. They get promoted for months and sell out in seconds. Is there such a thing as sneaker fatigue? Honestly, I think I just have leftover bitterness from the Nike React Element 87s, the original colorway in like light bone and that like crimson color, which were, in my opinion, the dopest shoe of 2018. Those things were so sick, and they like promoted them for Nike promoted them for months, and then literally they like I was on the app like the second that they released, and it immediately sold out. I don't know if it was like bots or whatever, but I didn't get a pair, and I could buy a pair now, but now I'm just like kind of bitter about it, and I haven't gotten them, even though I still think they're the dopest shoe. Maybe I'll get some, but it's just funny how like many shoes per week brands are launching. It's almost like to stay relevant in the conversation, Adidas and Nike have to release like multiple new shoes per week, which is just, that's insane. I don't know about that pace, but it feels like I want to say I'm getting tired of it, but I'm also being hypocritical because every time a new shoe comes out, I'm like, oh, I want to buy that. So I'm just a liar, basically. And then on Thursday, hopefully this is a little bit better of a thought. It was, Dear Creator, do not be anxious about what you'll become, whether full-time or freelance or photographer or writer or whatever. Instead, hone your voice, your aesthetic, and your craft. Meet new people. Be open to creating whatever they want, however they want it. You'll likely find that you ended up in a totally different and far happier place than you could have imagined, whether you stressed about it or not. So that idea, I think, is rooted in a couple ideas. I struggle with anxiety a lot. I think about anxiety quite a bit, and that was like partly reminiscent of the verse in the Beatitudes about do not be anxious, but it also kind of reminds me of that Rainier Marie Rilke quote. I think that's how you say his name. He's like, his book Letters to the Young Poet is one of my favorite, just like one of my favorite inspirational books that I've ever read. It's just he wrote back and forth with this young poet, just giving him advice, and those letters are just like, they're so beautifully written and so insightful. In the quote, or my thought this morning about like, don't be anxious about what you're going to become, I realized afterwards kind of reminded me of this quote that I'll read. Rilke says, be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Do not seek the answers which cannot be given to you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. And like, man, it's just such a good point that like, you just can't know where you're going to end up. You can't know what the future is. You can't know, if it's a question of like, when will I go full time? When can I be a freelance writer or photographer or whatever? Like, you're just not going to know. And so there's really no point in stressing about it. And the point that I was kind of making in the thought is like, I was a professional touring musician for 8 years before I even like picked up a camera. And then when I picked up a camera, I was also a writer. I wrote the first ever Instagram novel, was doing that, and then started to get more into photography professionally. Thought I would never shoot motion. Now I direct and shoot motion all the time. I love shooting it. And now I'm doing creative direction for a new business that I'm launching here in a couple months. So like back when I was playing music, I thought, okay, I'm going to be a musician like the rest of my life. Like that's going to be my job, right? And there's no way for me to know that I was going to become a photographer or a director or a creative director. And I think there was no point then in me stressing about like what will happen, because there's just no way for you to know. And even if I had ended up where I thought I wanted to be, I really don't think that I would be as happy as I am now, which is in a place that I could never have foreseen. And I've gotten to just by being open to new opportunities. So that's another thing too. Like as the creative director of this brand, I got here because I had a friend that reached out to me, said he had another friend who's now my co-founder, my partner. And he needed like content creation for social, and like that's not something that I want to do necessarily. But I got excited about the opportunity. I was really excited about working with my partner, and we just like hit it off, and ended up like it over the course of a year turning into something where we were like, let's just like spin this off into creating an entirely new thing that I am passionate about. And I could have never foreseen that that would have happened or that I would end up here. And it didn't matter whether or not like I stressed about it then or not. Like I'm here, and I'm like way happier than I was if I had just ended up being a musician or even a photographer or whatever, full time only. And so all that to say, like, you just can't predict where you're going to end up. So continue to hone your voice, continue to hone your vision, like on a daily basis, and just like honestly, just pursue that day and pursue improving that day and taking opportunities that day and being open to helping people that day. And eventually that will turn into something that you could never have expected. So I'm probably being redundant here, but hopefully that's some encouragement for you guys that are thinking about going full time or thinking about like, or stressing about, being freelance or whatever it is. So that was Thursday. And then Friday, it was kind of I think Friday's thought was basically like I'd spent all day Thursday basically watching the Kavanaugh hearings, which was not necessarily a great idea. That was just super stressful. And I think I was just like so exhausted and fatigued by not only just like the media coverage, but just like the inability of anyone to agree on anything or even like compromise. So on Friday, my morning thought was basically like two opposing sides, both equally convinced of their rightness, can find no common ground. It's sad how many people love to say like be humble, like the Kendrick Lamar song, but aren't willing to humble themselves. And to me, without getting into politics, it's just like no one that disagrees. Like if you want to die on a hill and you're unwilling to compromise, you're never going to find any common ground with anyone else, and you're never going to progress. And I think that works. That obviously works politically, but it works like creatively too. If you're back when I was in a band, like when we didn't remove the ego from the creation process, we wouldn't hear criticism, we wouldn't hear ideas, and things just wouldn't progress in a creative manner. And I think the same thing when you're working on a team as a photographer, like you have to be open to ideas. Like one of the things I love about being a photographer is that there's so many people bringing ideas to the table, and that always elevates the concept and elevates the final product. So I don't know. I feel like there's definitely a lack of humility, and I'm not saying I'm like perfect or even good at it. It's definitely something that I struggle with as well. But I think that that's the first step in finding compromise and in progressing both creatively and even as like a country. Like there has to be humility. So that was those are my morning thoughts last week. Probably some of them were stupid. Hopefully some of them were helpful. And then, I asked you guys to ask me some questions. So let me go through some of those. Where are we at right now? 24 minutes? All right. How has your previous career in music helped your career in photography? That's actually a really good question. It comes from my buddy JDP. And it's a great question because, oh no, you can see that I'm wearing shorts in this video. It's a great question because I learned a lot from music, and it's something I think about a lot when I'm creating today. So the biggest thing for me, my biggest takeaway from my time as a musician was back when we were in the band, we kind of ultimately our downfall was creating for what we thought people would like. I think we were creating honest music, but at the same time, we were packaging it in a way that was like, oh, this will do well at radio, or oh, this will be received well live, or oh, this will be easy to place in like a TV show or a movie. And honestly, it just like when you create with reception in mind, it just totally waters down your voice and your idea. I think the best art is polarizing. Like I think if you're creating good art, some people are going to just like absolutely love it, and some people are just going to hate it, and that's totally Like that's how you know you're on the right track, because if you're creating something that just everyone hands down loves, like that's super rare. Sometimes it happens, but it's super rare. If you're creating that sort of like mainstream, like just kind of good, then I feel like people just won't be passionate about it. And I think that's kind of where our music ended up. We created a record or records that were good, but that some people, like we had a few people that loved them, but it wasn't like some people were just like obsessed with it and had to tell their friends. And some people just like hated it and would never listen to us. It was just like, yeah, a teenage girl could listen to this, or yeah, like a mom or dad could listen to this. And it's like, that's not where you want to be if you're a musician or an artist. So um, I just think that when I'm creating these days as a photographer, not only do I kind of own that creative vision myself, I'm just creating what I want to create and what's honest to me. And even on Instagram, that's a I see that play out. Like I know what does well on Instagram. I know how to get likes. You know, if I were to post a super colorful landscape photo or a sunset photo, I know that would perform really well. And I know that when I post fitness work or fashion work, the stuff that I actually shoot or portrait work, it's not going to do as well. And I'm totally cool with that. Honestly, I want to create stuff that is meaningful to the people that like what I like and are into what I'm into. And ultimately, I'll create a stronger, I don't know what you want to call it, not necessarily fan base, but like following, because people that like my work because it's specific and it's because it's original. You know, even little silly things like the white space around my photos. I prefer the way my images look and imagery looks with like white editorial space. I just feel like it's cleaner. I think from my background in design, that's just something that I guess that's just how I like to look at things visually and how I like my work to be viewed and experienced visually. But I know that if I were to post a full-size image on Instagram, it would do a lot better. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with losing out on some of the attention span of people scrolling through Instagram to show the work the way that I want to show it. So, long-winded answer, but it was a great question. Let's see. What does your ideal version of Instagram look/feel like? And then where do you see the industry going in the next 5 to 10 years? So first of all, like, I don't want to say ideal Instagram is obviously just the chronological feed. Like, I just want to see the people that I follow because that's why I followed them in the first place. And we're not going back to the chronological feed, so there's no real reason in spending too much time bitching about it. But that would be awesome. That would be ideal. I'm not even saying like no ads. Like you can show me ads, but just show me a chronological feed. But that's not gonna happen. So where will it be in 5 years? I don't want to even like attempt a guess at that, because I think that honestly it could be something totally different, like not even a social media platform. The rate at which technology is advancing and the new technology and AI and AR and voice, like it could literally be something entirely different. And we saw that with the internet, like the rise of the internet. Like everyone wanted to create the newest website, and then we saw that with social media. Everyone wanted to create the newest social media platform. And I think like all those things reach sort of a critical mass, and some new technology comes along. So I don't necessarily want to say, but it kind of feels like, hold on one second, the camera stopped recording. Okay. It just kind of feels like the Instagram bubble is bursting a little bit. So let's see. Okay, what was the turning point of your career when your photography really took off? This is a question I get a lot. And I want to be clear that like there's no such thing as like an overnight success. I think there are a couple like turning points, but there's no like one major turning point that like changed my career. I think it's minimum 5 years to get your foot in the door. More realistically, 10 years of just busting your ass and creating and having small victory after small victory and little win after little win and like incremental steps forward that ultimately get you to where you want to be. I think that anyone that thinks that there's some sort of overnight success, or like there's some sort of turning point that if this happens, you'll have made it, it's just unrealistic. So think about this. Think about the Nike campaign that just happened with Colin Kaepernick. I can't remember. It's like believe in something or believe in everything, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. That image of Colin Kaepernick. I actually saw the photographer that shot that on Twitter. He said something about it the other day, and I think he said like, "Oh, this was such a great day shooting this image like 2 years ago." And so I guess Nike had relicensed that image, and I don't even remember. And I wish I remembered. The guy's a great photographer, but I don't even remember what his name is. And that's literally the biggest advertising campaign that has happened, certainly in the last few months, if not this entire year. And I wish I could remember that photographer's name. You would think that would be the make or break point for this photographer. He'd be super famous, and we all know who he is. And I'm sure a bunch of people know who he is. I'm just saying, there's no one thing, even if you think it's going to be the turning point, that really puts you over the edge. So that's my thought process. Do you do any workshops in NYC? Thanks for the morning. I don't do workshops really anywhere, to be honest with you. I'd like to do maybe a couple more, especially with Sony. But to be honest with you, I don't really understand workshops these days, because you can learn literally everything on YouTube. I think that there is a limited, there are limited few workshops that I think are worthwhile, stuff that doesn't get talked about. One of the really influential things for me when I was starting out as a photographer is I went to a workshop called Survival Guide, run by John Keatley, the photographer, John Keatley, and his wife, Nichelle, who they're awesome. And this workshop is literally the best workshop I've ever been to or seen or heard about. And it's about finding your style and also learning the business side of photography. So how to bid on a project, how to run e-promos and marketing campaigns and all that stuff. And that's just stuff that doesn't get covered a lot and no one really talks about, especially on YouTube. And so I think if you're looking at workshops for technical stuff, how to light or how to shoot gels or whatever, I don't know why you go to a workshop for that, because all of that stuff is on YouTube for free. So highly would recommend you save your money on creating work and advertising your work, on marketing your work. And unless you could find a workshop that is super beneficial and you don't feel like you can learn those skills anywhere else. So, but stay tuned. Maybe I'll be a total liar and do a workshop, in which case you should come, because you won't learn that information anywhere else. I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't know. I'll try to make it worthwhile. So, okay, got a few more questions. A lot of them are repeats. I think I'm gonna end that there, but I would like to maybe talk to you guys about the podcast a little bit more. So this will be on, sorry, I was reading. Okay, so this will be on YouTube, and I would love for you guys to comment and let me know what I can improve, what you guys would like to see, what you actually liked. Maybe actually leave for once some encouraging feedback on YouTube. If you guys liked it. If you didn't like it, then just it was shit and say it was shit. Or comment and rate it on iTunes or wherever you get the podcast, or send me an Instagram DM. You can find me on Instagram at Edsel. That's where I post my morning thoughts Monday through Friday. That's the reason I started this whole thing in the first place. And so send me a message on things that you'd like to see from the podcast. I'll also hopefully remind you guys to ask me some questions about so that I can answer on the podcast. And then let me know what I should call this thing. And we're at about 35 minutes. I think I'm just going to end it here. Short but sweet one. And I'll see you guys maybe next week. Cheers.